Dawn broke over the Texas plains to reveal 300 Comanche warriors surrounding Zara Bell Washington's ranch. Their horses stood silent as monuments in the morning mist. Feathers caught the first light. War paint gleamed on faces carved from stone. Zara stepped from her cabin door. Her hand found the rifle leaning against the frame. The weapon felt small against what stretched before her. Chief Tochawicka dismounted. His boots touched earth that belonged to her father once. Now it belonged to her. Today it might belong to no one. The chief walked forward. His warriors remained still as the graves behind her house. Morning air carried the scent of sage and something else. Fear, maybe, or destiny. You gave water to my son. His voice carried the weight of seasons. Zara's throat tightened. Yesterday rushed back like floodwater. She had found a young warrior by her well. Blood matted his black hair. Arrow wound in his shoulder wept red onto dry earth. His lips cracked white from thirst. Every neighbor would have left him to die. Every law said she should have done the same. Instead, she had lifted his head, poured water between his lips, cleaned his wound with her own hands. He was dying, she said. Yes. The chief reached into his saddlebag, pulled out gifts wrapped in deerskin, a silver bracelet, turquoise stones, a medicine pouch sewn with tiny beads. My people do not forget kindness. Zara's pulse hammered in her ears. Behind the chief, 300 warriors waited for her response. Behind her, empty rooms echoed with her father's voice. He had built this place with his own hands, taught her to read the sky for weather, showed her which stars pointed home. Your son would have done the same, perhaps. The chief's eyes held depths she could not measure. But you did do it. The wind picked up. Dust devils danced between the warriors and her porch. She had seen dust devils before. They came when pressure built too high, when the air itself could not hold still. What do you want? Partnership. The word hung between them like smoke. Zara knew what it meant. Alliance with the Comanche meant war with everyone else. Deputy Marshal Crenshaw had been circling her property for months, looking for reasons to take it. This would be reason enough. My neighbors will not understand. Your neighbors take what they please. Call it law. The chief's weathered hand gestured toward the horizon. The drought kills my people. Kills yours too. Water does not see color. True words. The wells had been running dry for 2 months. Cattle died with their tongues hanging out. Crops withered in fields that used to run green. Even the river had shrunk to a muddy thread. You offer protection. I offer partnership. You share water. We share strength. Zara looked past him to the faces of his warriors. Young men with rifles across their saddles. Old men with scars. That told stories. They had ridden through the night to reach her. That meant something. Her father's voice whispered in the wind. He had always said the land belonged to whoever loved it most. These people loved it. She could see it in how they sat their horses, how they watched the sky. The cavalry will come. The cavalry comes anyway. The chief stepped closer. Question is whether you face them alone. Zara's grip loosened on the rifle. Her father had taught her to shoot. Also taught her when not to. This felt like a time for not shooting. Water rights during drought. Water rights during drought. And after, we see what after brings. The sun climbed higher. Soon the heat would make thinking difficult. Soon Deputy Marshal Crenshaw would arrive for his weekly visit. Soon she would have to choose between the life her father had given her and the life she might build. My well is deep, she said finally. Deep enough for all of us. The chief extended his hand. His palm showed calluses from decades of hard work. Zara's palm showed the same. She reached out. Their hands met in the space between two worlds. Then we have a deal. The warriors behind him straightened, not in threat, but in acknowledgement. The morning wind died down. Dust settled on the earth where their horses stood. Chief Tochawicka smiled. The expression transformed his face completely. My son will be pleased, he said. You had the heart of a warrior. What is his name? Ayana. It means eternal blossom. Zara nodded. She would remember that name. Something told her it would matter more than she knew. The chief mounted his horse. His warriors prepared to follow, but before they left, he turned back. The water you gave my son yesterday may save us all today. Then they were gone. 300 warriors dissolving into the prairie like morning mist, leaving only hoofprints and the scent of possibility. Zara stood alone on her porch. The rifle felt heavier now. The land stretched wider. In the distance, dust rose from the direction of town. Deputy Marshal Crenshaw, right on schedule. She went inside to make coffee. Today would bring consequences, but for the first time in months, she would not face them alone. Deputy Marshal Crenshaw arrived before the coffee finished brewing. His badge caught Sunlight like a warning, 3 men rode behind him. Their faces held the particular hardness that came from believing themselves righteous. Miss Washington. Crenshaw dismounted, slowed, made a show of studying the hoofprints in her yard. Appears. You had visitors. Zara stepped onto the porch. The coffee pot steamed behind her. I get visitors. 300 of them. He kicked at the churned earth. All mounted, all armed. Counting hoofprints is quite a skill. Marshall. Crenshaw's jaw tightened. He had been trying to take her land for 6 months. Always proper. Always legal. Always finding new reasons why. A young woman could not possibly manage such property alone. Consorting with hostiles is a federal offense. Sharing water is Christian charity. The men behind Crenshaw shifted in their saddles. She recognized 2 of them. Jim Morrison from the spread east of town. Cal Henderson, who ran cattle north of the river. Both had been sniffing around her property since her father died. Yup. Father was a good man, Morrison said. His voice carried false sympathy, thick as molasses, but he would not want you putting yourself in danger. My father taught me to judge danger for myself. Henderson spat tobacco juice into her yard. Judgment comes with experience. Experience comes with age. The wind picked up. Dust swirled between the horses and her steps. Zara watched the men's faces, saw the hunger there, land hunger, the kind that made men forget their manners. My land, my choice. Crenshaw stepped forward. Not if that choice threatens territorial security. Giving water to the thirsty threatens. No one giving aid to warriors does. The 4th man had not spoken yet. He sat his horse apart from the others, younger, better dressed, something familiar about the set of his shoulders. You know my daughter Victoria, Morrison said, following her gaze. Well, you know of her. She handles our business affairs now. Victoria Morrison. The woman wore men's clothes but carried herself with feminine grace. Her dark hair was pulled back severe. Her eyes held intelligence that made Zara suddenly cautious. Miss Morrison, Miss Washington. Victoria's voice was cultured. Easter, education, perhaps we could speak privately. The men exchanged glances. Morrison nodded to his daughter. Crenshaw looked ready to object, but held his tongue. They rode off toward the main road. Victoria remained. He made quite an impression. This morning, word travels fast. Faster when it involves 300 warriors. Victoria dismounted, approached the porch with careful steps. May I? Zara gestured to the chair beside the door. Her father's chair. No one had sat in it since his funeral. Victoria settled herself with unconscious elegance. The drought has everyone desperate, including you, especially me. Victoria's hands rested flat on her knees. Working hands despite the fine clothes. Our cattle are dying. Wells running dry. Father is talking about selling to the big companies up north. Zara poured 2 cups of coffee. The morning sun climbed higher. Heat would be unbearable soon, but for now, the shade held cool pockets of air. What does that have to do with me? Everything. Victoria accepted the coffee with a nod. Your land sits on the deepest aquifer in the territory. Your wells are still running clean. True words. Zara's father had chosen this spot for good reason. The water table ran close to the surface here. Springs bubbled up in 3 places on her property. Even in drought, the flow continued. So everyone wants what you have. Victoria sipped her coffee. The question is who you choose to share it with. A rider approached from the north. Young man on a paint horse. He moved with the natural grace of someone born to the saddle. His shoulder showed fresh bandaging beneath his shirt. Ayana. He pulled up at the edge of the yard, studied Victoria with curious eyes, then looked to Zara. The alliance holds. It holds. Victoria's cup rattled against its saucer almost imperceptibly, but Zara caught the sound. You know each other, Zara said. The silence stretched thin. Ayana's horse stamped impatiently. Victoria set down her coffee with deliberate care. We have met, Victoria said finally. More than met. Ayana dismounted. His voice carried an edge. You promised water rights for safe passage, then sold that information to your father. Victoria's cheeks flushed. I promised to try. I never promised success. Your promises are wind. My promises are complicated. Zara watched the exchange. Undercurrents flowed between these two. History, betrayal, something deeper than simple negotiation. What promises? She asked. Victoria stood, smoothed her riding skirt. I should go. What promises? Zara repeated. Ayana answered. She offered water access for our horses, our people. Said she could convince the other ranchers to share resources during drought, and she convinced them to post guards instead, turn us away with rifles. Victoria's jaw tightened. The situation changed. My father learned about the meetings. I had no choice. There is always choice. The words came out harder than Zara intended. Both Victoria and Ayana looked at her. She felt the weight of their attention. The weight of decisions that would ripple far beyond her property lines. The Alliance is with me now, Zara continued. No one else. Victoria nodded. Walk to her horse, mounted with fluid grace. Be careful who you trust, Miss Washington. The territory is full of people who make promises they cannot keep. She rode away without looking back. Dust marked her passage long after she disappeared. Ayana stepped onto the porch. She will bring trouble. She already has. Zara studied his face. The strong bones. The intelligent eyes. Yesterday she had seen him dying. Today he sat her father's chair with natural ease. Tell me about these meetings, secret negotiations, 6 months of trying to find peaceful solutions. His hands worked restlessly. She seemed different, willing to bridge 2 worlds, but she was not, or she was not allowed to be. The distinction mattered. Zara understood the weight of family expectations, the pressure of inherited obligations. Her father had carried those burdens too. The aquifer runs deeper than they know, she said. Ayana looked up how deep. Zara went inside, returned with a leather portfolio, her father's maps, his surveys, 20 years of careful notation about water sources throughout the territory, deep enough to supply half the territory, if managed properly. Ayana studied the papers. His finger traced underground rivers, natural springs, seasonal flows that most people never noticed. This changes everything. Or nothing. Depends on who controls it. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Both looked toward the horizon. Storm clouds gathered where sky met earth. The first real clouds in 2 months. Rain, Ayana said. Maybe. They watched the clouds build. Lightning flickered in their depths. The air grew heavy with possibility. Or disappointment. In drought country, clouds were promises the sky often broke. Your father was a wise man. He was careful, planned for lean times. He raised a daughter who thinks the same way. Zara felt heat in her cheeks. The compliment touched something she had not known was tender. She folded the maps carefully, stored them away from the wind. Storm is moving fast. They always do out here. Rain began falling, fat drops that hit the dust and disappeared instantly. Then more drops. Then a steady patter that brought the scent of hope. They sat together on the porch, watched water pool in the yard. The first real moisture the earth had tasted in weeks. Zara's cattle lifted their heads toward the sky. Even the horses seemed to smile. It will not be enough, Ayana said. No, but it is something. The rain fell harder, drummed on the roof, filled the silence between them with sound that spoke of renewal, of second chances, of promises the earth actually kept. Thunder rolled overhead. Lightning illuminated the clouds from within. For a moment, the whole sky blazed white. Then darkness returned. But the rain continued. The rain lasted 2 hours, left puddles that vanished by noon. The earth drank desperate and remained thirsty. Zara and Ayana rode north 3 days later, following the river that should have been running full. Instead, they found cracked mud, scattered pools that reflected empty sky, fishbones white in the sun. River died here first, Ayana said. His horse picked careful steps across the dry bed. Zara followed on her bay mare. The silence stretched heavy between them. This was not natural drought. Rivers did not die. Way something upstream, she said. They found the first dam 2 hours later. Logs and stones piled 20 feet high. Water backed up behind the barrier in a man-made lake. The lake fed irrigation channels that ran east toward the big cattle operations. The channels ran full while the river below ran dry. Morrison's mark. Ayana pointed to brands burned into the logs. Zara dismounted, walked the length of the dam. Construction was recent, maybe 6 months old, right when the drought started getting serious. There will be more. They found 3 more dams before sunset. Each one bore different brands. Henderson, Sterling, companies she did not recognize with names that sounded Eastern. The water table was being systematically diverted, stolen. They made camp in a grove of dying cottonwoods. Ayana built a small fire. Zara shared jerky and hardtack from her saddlebags. The flames cast dancing shadows on their faces. Your father knew, Ayana said, suspected, could not prove it. Now we can prove it. Zara poked at the fire with a stick. Sparks rose toward stars that seemed distant. Proving and doing something about it are different things. What would you do? But question hung between them. She studied his face in the firelight. Strong jaw, eyes that missed nothing. He was asking about more than dams. Depends on who stands with me. My people stand with you. And after, when the water runs free again, Ayana was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Night sounds emerged from the darkness, owl calls, coyote songs, the whisper of wind through dry grass. I am promised to another, he said finally. The words hit her like cold water. She had not asked, had not wanted to know, but now the knowledge sat between them, heavy as stones. Chief's daughter from the northern tribe, he continued. Alliance marriage. Unite our peoples against common threats. Zara nodded, kept her voice steady. Makes sense, he agreed. But makes no joy. She understood. Duty was a rope that bound everyone out here. Women to their father's wishes, men to their tribe's needs, land to whoever held the strongest claim. When after the water crisis ends, one way or another, thunder rumbled in the distance. They looked toward the horizon. More clouds building, maybe more false promises. Tell me about her. Ayana's betrothed. He smiled without humor. Strong, beautiful, everything a chief's son should want. But she is not you. The confession struck the air between them. Zara felt her pulse quicken, felt the careful walls she had built start to crack. I am not suitable for a chief's son. You are suitable for this chief's son. She met his eyes across the fire, saw the truth there, the wanting, the impossibility, all of it burning together. Your people would never accept me. Some would, others would learn too, and mine would never forgive me. They sat in the space between desire and reality. The fire burned lower. Stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Time moved forward whether they wanted it to or not. We should ride back, Zara said. We should. Neither moved. They returned to her ranch the next evening, found horses tied to her fence, voices from the porch, company she had not expected. Miguel Santos stood when they approached. His hat was dusty from hard riding. His face carried the weathered lines of a man who worked with his hands. Miss Washington, he nodded respectfully. We need to talk. Behind him sat two other men, one white, one black. All three looked like they had been waiting for hours. About water, said the white man, and staying alive. They gathered around her kitchen table. Santos was Mexican, ran a small spread south of town. The white man was Tom Bradley, scratched out a living on 40 acres and a handful of cattle. The black man introduced himself as Moses Freeman, worked a patch of land near the territorial line. Small ranches, Santos said, getting squeezed out. Bradley nodded. Big companies, buying up land cheap, waiting for us to go broke, or die of thirst, Freeman added. Zara poured coffee, served biscuits left over from morning. The men ate with the careful gratitude of people who had missed meals recently. You heard about the alliance, she said. Heard about it. Came to ask if it extends to others. Santos leaned forward. We know you got water. We know you got protection. We got nothing but empty wells and cattle bones. What are you offering? Labor, Bradley said. Guns, if it comes to that. Whatever you need. Freeman nodded. Strength in numbers. Always has been. Ayana had remained silent through the conversation. Now he spoke. How many others? Dozen families. Maybe more. Santos counted on his fingers. All small operations. All hanging on by threads. All getting pressured to sell, Bradley added. Zara considered. A dozen families meant 50 or 60 people, including children, all depending on decisions she made at this table. The pressure comes from where? Banks, mostly, calling in loans early, raising interest rates. Freeman's hands worked restlessly. Also accidents, cattle disappearing, wells getting fouled with strange substances. Legal pressure too, Santos said. New regulations, fees for everything, inspections that find problems where none existed before. Ayana caught Zara's eye. She saw understanding pass between them. This was bigger than drought, bigger than water rights. Someone was clearing the territory of small landowners, consolidating power. Give me 3 days, Zara said. The men exchanged glances. Santos nodded for all of them. 3 days. Then we have to make other choices. They rode away in the gathering darkness. Zara and Ayana stood on the porch, watched their dust settle in the still air. Victoria was right about one thing, Ayana said. What? This is complicated. The next morning brought Victoria herself. She arrived alone, rode directly to the porch without hesitation, dismounted with a fluid grace that marked her every movement. I need to tell you something, she said without preamble. Zara was feeding chickens, scattered grain with steady rhythm. Then tell it. I have been working with Marshal Crenshaw. The grain stopped falling. Zara's hand froze in the bag. Passing information. About your activities. About the alliance. Zara turned slowly. Victoria stood with her hands clasped behind her back. Her face was pale but determined. Why? Because I thought I was protecting people, preventing war. Victoria's voice carried the weight of sleepless nights. Because I was a fool. And now I know Crenshaw is not interested in preventing anything. He is interested in controlling everything. Victoria reached into her saddlebag, pulled out a leather folder. These are his real orders. Not territorial security. Land acquisition. For specific companies. Specific people. Zara took the folder, read the papers inside. Her blood chilled. Orders to declare her ranch a threat to territorial security. Seize the property under federal authority. Transfer ownership to Morrison Sterling Cattle Company, your father's company. My father knows nothing about this. Crenshaw is acting on behalf of others, using our name, Eastern investors, railroad companies, people who see this territory as empty land waiting to be filled. Zara looked up from the papers. Victoria's eyes held genuine regret, and something else, fear. They mean to take everything, everything, Victoria confirmed, starting with you. Thunder rolled across the sky. Storm clouds gathered where the horizon met the earth. Lightning flickered in their depths. The air grew heavy with the promise of rain that might never fall. Victoria's warning came too late by 3 hours. Zara heard the horses before dawn, boots on her porch, the deliberate sounds of men who believed themselves righteous. She reached for the rifle beside her bed, found only empty air. Miss Washington, Crenshaw's voice carried through the thin walls. Federal warrant. Open the door. She dressed quickly. Cotton dress, work boots, braided her hair with steady hands while her heart hammered against her ribs. The mirror showed a face that belonged to her father. Strong bones, determined eyes. She would need both today. Coming, 6 men waited on her porch. Crenshaw wore his badge high on his chest. The others carried themselves with the particular swagger of men who confused authority with righteousness. Her rifle leaned against the wall, too far to reach. Zara Bell Washington. You are under arrest for providing aid to hostile forces. What aid? Crenshaw produced papers from his vest pocket. Water, shelter, information regarding territorial defenses. I gave water to a dying man. You gave water to a Comanche warrior, then entered into military alliance with enemy forces. The words carried legal weight. She heard it in his tone, saw it in the way the other men positioned themselves. This was not negotiation. This was conclusion. I want to see those papers. You will see them at trial. They bound her hands with rope, led her to a wagon that waited in her yard. Iron bars welded to the sides, a cage on wheels. The sun rose as they drove toward town. Light caught the metal and threw hard shadows across her face. The jail sat behind the courthouse. Stone walls 2 feet thick, windows too small for anything but light. They locked her in the back cell, farthest from the door, farthest from hope. Marshal, she spoke through the bars. How long till the circuit judge arrives? Could be weeks. What about my cattle? Federal authority extends to property management during security investigations. His smile held no warmth. Your land is in protective custody. The door slammed. His footsteps faded. She was alone with stone walls and the sound of her own breathing. Hours passed. The sun moved across the window, cast shifting patterns on the floor. She traced the light with her eyes, measured time by shadows. Tried not to think about what was happening to her alliance. Miguel Santos arrived at her ranch. That evening found federal agents inventorying cattle, counting fences, measuring well depths. The agents wore badges but spoke with Eastern accents. Where is Miss Washington? Santos asked. Federal custody, the lead agent replied. Property is under investigation. Santos rode hard to the Comanche camp, found Chief Tochawika staring into a fire that threw sparks toward distant stars. The chief's face was carved from stone. His eyes held a particular stillness that came before storms. They took her, Santos said. I know. What do we do? The chief was quiet for a long time. Warriors gathered around the fire, their faces painted with shadows and flame. The night air carried the scent of sage and something else. Violence, maybe, or justice. My son rides to gather the other tribes. This alliance was bigger than one woman. The chief's voice carried weight accumulated over decades, but she was the heart of it. And now we see if the heart can survive without the body. Ayana received the news at the northern camp. Chief Mop's daughter, Ayana's intended bride, delivered the message herself. She was beautiful in the way that made men write songs, strong in the way that made fathers proud. Everything a warrior's wife should be. Your water woman is imprisoned, she said. She has a name, does she? I thought she was just a convenience. Ayana studied his intended's face, saw intelligence there, and hurt. and the particular anger that came from being second choice in your own marriage. She is more than convenient, more than me. The question hung between them. Around the fire, other warriors pretended not to listen. The flames crackled. Night sounds emerged from the darkness. The conversation that would determine the future of two tribes played out in whispers and glances. Different than you, Ayana said finally. But more important, he did not answer. Could not answer. The silence stretched until it became answer. Enough, then go to her. His intended bride stood with fluid grace. But know that when you leave this fire, you leave everything it represents. Ayana nodded. I know, including me. Including you. She walked away without looking back. Her footsteps faded into the darkness. Around the fire, warriors avoided his eyes. Some relationships could not be repaired once broken. Some choices could not be undone. Moses Freeman brought word to the small ranchers. They gathered in Tom Bradley's barn. 12 families represented, 43 people counting children, all hanging on by threads that were fraying fast. They got her, Freeman said. Property is seized. Alliance is broken. What about the water? Bradley asked. What about it? Can't drink water from a well. You can't reach. The families looked at each other. Desperate calculations played across weathered faces. Children who needed food, cattle that needed water, dreams that needed hope. We could try the northern route, suggested Maria Santos. Cross Comanche territory, reach her wells from the backside, and get shot for our trouble, replied Jim Walsh. Without her there, we are just trespassers. We are trespassers everywhere, Freeman said. Question is where we make our stand. Victoria rode to her father's house, found him in his study, maps spread across his desk, correspondence stacked in neat piles. The methodical organization of a man who controlled vast holdings. Father, Victoria, I heard about the arrest. Unfortunate business. Whose business? He looked up from his papers. Federal business. Has nothing to do with us. Your name is on the transfer papers. Morrison's face went very still. What transfer papers? Victoria produced the documents Crenshaw had shown her, watched her father's expression change as he read, saw understanding dawn in his eyes, then anger. I did not authorize this. Then who did? Someone with access to our letterhead, our legal seal. He stood slowly. Someone who wanted our name on documents we never signed. Crenshaw. Crenshaw is a tool. Tools are used by hands. We need to find the hands. Father and daughter studied the papers together. Legal language crafted to obscure rather than clarify. References to Eastern investment groups. Shell companies with innocent names. A web of ownership that led nowhere and everywhere. Railroad money, Morrison said finally. You are certain? I have seen this pattern before. They want the land, all of it, wall-to-wall railroad territory. Victoria felt something cold settle in her stomach. The water rights. Control the water. Control everything else. People, cattle, crops. Everything. And Zara Morrison looked at his daughter, saw something in her face that made him choose his words carefully. She was in the way. And now she is an example. For anyone else who thinks about getting in, the way. Thunder rolled across the sky. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Lightning flickered in their depths. The air grew heavy with the promise of rain that might never fall, or might fall too late to matter. Victoria stood at the window, watched the storm build. Her reflection stared back from the glass. A woman caught between worlds she had helped create and consequences she had never intended. I have to fix this, she said. You cannot fix federal authority. I can try. And destroy our family in the process. Victoria turned from the window, met her father's eyes. What family survives by destroying others? She left without waiting for an answer. Some questions were their own reply. Some choices clarified everything that came after. The storm moved closer. Wind picked up. Dust devils danced between the buildings. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when pressure could no longer be contained. In her cell, Zara heard the thunder, felt the barometric drop that preceded serious weather. Storm was coming, the kind that changed everything or changed nothing. The kind that revealed who had built on solid ground and who had built on sand. She pressed her face to the window, watched lightning illuminate the clouds from within. For a moment, the whole sky blazed white, then darkness returned, but the storm continued building. Victoria arrived at the jail after midnight. The guard was drunk, his keys hung loose on his belt. She had brought whiskey and sympathy in equal measure. Both proved persuasive. Just want to talk to her, Victoria whispered. Woman to woman. The guard's eyes were glassy. His breath reeked of corn liquor. 5 minutes. 10, 7. Deal. The cell door creaked open. Zara sat on the narrow cot, her back straight despite 3 days of captivity. Her eyes held the particular alertness of someone who had learned not to trust appearances. "Come to gloat?" Zara asked. "Come to get you out." Victoria produced a second set of keys from her coat. "Guard's backup set. He keeps them in his desk drawer." "Why?" "Because I caused this. Time I fixed it." Zara stood slowly. Her muscles protested from sleeping on stone. "What is the plan?" "Get you out. Get you home. Stop them from destroying the springs." "They mean to destroy the springs." Victoria's face went pale. "Tomorrow morning Crenshaw has dynamite. Says the natural springs are a security risk. Potential meeting place for hostile forces. But really, they want permanent water scarcity. Makes the territory easier to control." Zara felt ice in her veins. Without the springs, her wells would run dry within weeks. The entire aquifer would shift. Everything her father had built would die. How much time? Dawn, maybe 6 hours. They moved through the jail silently. The drunk guard snored at his desk. His whiskey bottle stood empty beside a plate of half-eaten beans. Victoria's plan had worked perfectly. Outside, horses waited in the alley. Victoria had thought of everything. Food, water, weapons, the methodical preparation of someone who understood that failure meant death. "Where do we go?" Zara asked. "Your ranch first. Gather what we can. Then north to find Aina." They rode. Hard through the darkness, stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. The land stretched empty around them, to women alone in territory that belonged to whoever could hold it. Zara's ranch looked different in moonlight. Federal agents had left their mark everywhere. Broken fences, scattered equipment, cattle wandering loose without direction. The house stood empty, windows dark, dreams interrupted. They were thorough. Victoria said Zara dismounted at her father's workshop, found his tools scattered but intact. She gathered what she needed: surveying equipment, water testing supplies, the leather portfolio containing his maps. "What are you thinking?" Victoria asked. "Thinking we need help. More help than just us. The alliance is broken. Maybe not." They found Aina. 2 hours before dawn, he sat alone by a dying fire. His horse grazed nearby. He had been waiting. Somehow he had known they would come. "You found her," he said. "She found herself. I just opened the door." Ayana stood. His face was carved. "From shadow and firelight, the tribal council is split. Half want to honor the alliance. Half want to pull back, wait for better times." "There may not be better times," Zara said. She showed him the maps. Explained about the dynamite, the plan to destroy the springs. His face grew darker with each revelation. "They mean to break the aquifer permanently. Control it. Channel what remains through their systems. And the people who depend on it. Find other places to live. Or die trying." Ayana studied the maps by firelight. His finger traced underground rivers, natural springs, the delicate network that kept the territory alive. "There are 3 springheads," he said. 3 sites they have to hit simultaneously. Otherwise water just reroutes through the remaining channels. 3 teams. "Exactly." Victoria leaned forward. "I can reach the Morrison holdings, convince my father's men to help protect the eastern springs. And I can gather the small ranches," Zara added. "They have everything to lose if this succeeds. That leaves the main springs on your property." Ayana met her eyes. "The most heavily guarded and the most important." They sat in the space between planning and action. The fire crackled. Dawn approached with the inevitability of consequences. Somewhere in the distance, men with dynamite prepared to reshape the territory according to their will. "The tribal council," Zara asked, "will follow strength. Show them we can win. They will join the fight. And if we lose, then they were right to wait." Victoria mounted. Her horse, Eastern Springs. "I will send word if we succeed." She rode away without looking back. Dust marked her passage until she disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. 2 people remained where 3 had sat. "Your intended bride?" Zara asked. "Former intended bride." "I am sorry, I am not." The confession hung between them. Dawn lightened the eastern sky. Time was running out, but for a moment they sat in the peace that came from understanding each other completely. "We should gather the others," Ayana said. Yes, neither moved. "After this is over," he continued. "After this is over, what? We see what after brings," she smiled. The first real smile in days. Deep wisdom. Or deep hope. They rode to Bradley's ranch, found the small ranchers already gathering. Word had spread through the network of desperate people. Moses Freeman had brought his family. Miguel Santos had brought his sons. Tom Bradley had brought anyone who could. Hold a rifle. 12 families, Santos reported. 43 people total, counting children. Children stay back, Zara said. Children go where their parents go, replied Maria Santos. Same as always, true words. In territory this harsh, families survived together or died separately. There was no middle ground, no safe distance from consequences. The plan is simple, Zara explained. Protect the springs, stop the dynamite, save the water. And after? Bradley asked. After we see what after brings. They moved out in the gray hour before dawn. Riders spread across the landscape, heading toward different destinations. The eastern group followed Victoria toward Morrison Holdings. The northern group followed Santos toward the river dams. The main group followed Zara toward her ranch, toward the springs that meant life or death for everyone in the territory. Federal agents had already arrived. Zara counted 20 men, more than she had expected. They worked methodically, placing charges around the spring heads, running fuses back to safe distances, the work of professionals who understood demolition. Too many, Ayanna whispered. They lay on a ridge overlooking the ranch. Dawn broke around them. Light revealed the scope of what they faced. 20 armed agents, enough dynamite to crater the landscape. Crenshaw directing operations with military precision, maybe, definitely. Zara studied the scene through her father's field glasses, saw something that made her pause. The agents were focused on the mainsprings, but there was another water source, hidden her father's emergency well, dug in secret during the dry years. There, she pointed, behind the house. If we can reach it. And do what? Flood the charges. Water and dynamite do not play well together, Ayanna considered. Risky. Everything is risky now. They worked their way down the ridge, used the morning shadows for cover, reached a barn without being seen. The emergency well was 50 yards away, across open ground, under the eyes of 20 federal agents. I go alone, Zara said. No, I know the property. Know where the pipes run. You provide distraction. What kind of distraction? She smiled. The kind you are best at, Ayanna understood. He gathered his rifle, checked his ammunition, prepared to do what Comanche warriors had always done when their people faced extinction. He asked, when you hear the pump start. Dawn broke fully. Light flooded the landscape. Federal agents prepared to destroy the springs that had sustained life in the territory for generations. On a ridge above, desperate people prepared to stop them. The morning air held the weight of decisions that would echo through history. What was life? Life was worth fighting for. Everything else was just details waiting to be written. Zara reached the emergency well as the sun cleared the horizon. Her father's hand pump stood exactly where memory placed it, 50 yards from the mainsprings, hidden behind the tool shed he had built with deliberate care. The pump handle was warm from morning light. She worked it slowly. Water rose through pipes her father had laid in secret. The sound was soft, rhythmic, the heartbeat of hope rising from deep earth. Ayanna's rifle cracked from the ridge. Federal agents scattered, dove behind equipment, drew weapons, shouted orders that carried on the wind. Crenshaw's voice rose above the others, commanding, controlled, the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Find the shooter, secure the perimeter. More shots. Ayanna had moved, was firing from a different position, drawing attention away from the springs, away from Zara. Water began flowing from the emergency well, clear, cold, tasting of minerals and possibility. Zara redirected the flow through irrigation channels her father had dug, channels that led directly to the main springs. The dynamite charges sat on dry ground. Fuses ran back to safe distances. Everything calculated for maximum destruction, but dynamite needed dry conditions. Water changed the equation there. An agent pointed toward the toolshed. Movement behind the building. Zara dropped flat, crawled toward the next irrigation gate. Water followed her path, spreading across ground that had been thirsty for months. The earth drank grateful and asked for more. More rifle shots from the ridge. The small ranchers had arrived. Bradley's voice carried across the morning air. Federal agents, you are trespassing on private property. We have authority. Crenshaw shouted back. Show us the papers. Papers were signed under duress, called Santos, no legal standing. Zara reached the main irrigation control. Her father had built it to manage spring floods. Now she used it to create one. Water rushed toward the dynamite charges, toward the careful plans of men who thought they controlled everything. The first charge fizzled. Fuse died in rising water. The second charge followed. Then the third. Crenshaw's demolition plan dissolved in the flood Zara had unleashed. The charges are compromised, an agent reported. Then set new ones. Higher ground. Sir, we don't have enough explosives for a second setup. Crenshaw's face went red. Then improvise. Victoria arrived with the Eastern group. Morrison's ranch hands rode behind her, men who worked the land, who understood that water was life. Their rifles gleamed in morning light. Federal agents, Victoria called. You are surrounded. True. Words. The ridge held small ranchers. The east held Morrison's men. The north held something else. War paint. Feathers. The sound of horses moving with deadly purpose. Chief Tochawicka had arrived. 300 Comanche warriors spread across the landscape, silent, disciplined, waiting for orders from their chief. The morning sun caught their weapons, reflected light that spoke of consequences. This is a federal operation, Crenshaw announced. This is tribal land, the chief replied. Treaty land. Your authority ends where our territory begins. The treaty was superseded by territorial law. Show me the documents. Crenshaw's hand moved toward his weapon, stopped. 300 rifles aimed at his position. The mathematics of survival were clear. Even federal authority had limits. Stand down, he ordered his men. Sir, stand down. The agents lowered their weapons, stepped back from the ruined demolition site. Water continued flowing from emergency well, spreading across ground that had been dying of thirst. Morrison rode up on his black stallion. His face was carved from stone. His eyes held the particular anger that came from being used by clever men. Marshal Crenshaw, you forged my signature on federal documents. Sir, I can explain. No explanation needed. You are under citizen's arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy. Crenshaw's face went pale. You have no authority. I have plenty of authority. And plenty of witnesses. True words, the ridge held. 43 people who had seen the forged documents, who had heard Crenshaw's orders, who understood the difference between law and lawlessness. Federal marshals arrived from the territorial capital, real ones, carrying real warrants for real crimes. They arrested Crenshaw and his agents, loaded them into wagons that would carry them to trial, to justice, to consequences. The small ranchers gathered around Zara's well, the same well where the story had begun, where she had given water to a dying warrior, where kindness had grown into something larger than anyone had imagined. Miguel Santos filled his canteen. Tom Bradley watered his horse. Moses Freeman washed the dust from his face. The water tasted of minerals and hope and the future they were building together. The alliance holds, Chief Tochawicka asked. The alliance holds, Zara confirmed. Ayana dismounted near the well. His rifle was slung across his shoulder. His face showed the particular peace that came from choosing the right side of history. Your intended bride, Zara asked quietly, will find a better husband. Someone who chooses duty over love. And you choose what? I choose both. New kind of duty. To the future instead of the past. Victoria approached with documents in her hand. Legal papers. Water rights agreements. The framework for something unprecedented in territorial history. Shared management, she explained. Your land, our resources. Comanche protection, equal partnership, and profits. Shared according to contribution, fair shares for fair work. Zara studied the papers, her father's dream written in legal language, partnership instead of conquest, cooperation instead of competition, water shared instead of hoarded. Where do I sign? The ceremony took place at sunset. Zara's hand touched the pen first, then Chief Tochawicka, then Victoria, then representatives from 12 ranching families, black ink on white paper, words that would reshape the territory. Children played around the well while their parents planned the future. The sound of laughter mixed with adult conversation. Hope and possibility flowed together. Water continued rising from deep earth, fed the springs, filled the channels, spread across land that had been dying. The emergency, well, had become something permanent, something that would outlast all of them. Thunder rolled across the sky. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Real clouds this time, heavy with rain that would actually fall. The drought was breaking. Natural cycles returning to their ancient rhythm. Storm coming, Ayana observed. Good storm, Zara replied. They sat together on her father's porch, watched lightning flicker in the distance. The air grew heavy with moisture, with possibility, with the promise of rain that would fall when it was needed. Other couples gathered around the property, Victoria and a young Morrison ranch hand whose name was Kindness, Santos and his wife whose garden would bloom again, Bradley and Freeman whose children would inherit a territory built on cooperation instead of conquest. The first drops began falling, fat drops that hit the dust and disappeared instantly. Then more drops. Then a steady rain that brought the scent of renewal, of second chances, of promises the earth intended to keep. Your father would be proud, Ayana said. He would be surprised. He dreamed smaller than this. Smaller dreams are easier to achieve. Bigger dreams are worth achieving. Rain fell, harder, drummed on the roof, filled the silence between them with sound that spoke of continuation, of stories that grew beyond their beginnings, of water that connected all living things. Children splashed in the puddles forming in the yard. Their parents watched from the porch. Multiple generations gathered around the world that had saved them all. Native Americans, white settlers, Mexican ranchers, freed slaves, all sharing water, all sharing hope. The story had come full circle. Kindness had grown into alliance. Alliance had grown into community. Community had grown into something unprecedented in the territory's history. Water continued flowing from the well, would continue flowing long after all of them were gone. Future generations would gather here, would remember the woman who gave water to a dying warrior, who chose mercy over vengeance, who built bridges instead of walls. Lightning illuminated the clouds from within. Thunder rolled across the landscape. Rain fell steady and sure. The drought was over. The territory would bloom again. The well would sustain them all. And that is all to the story. For now, please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.